Welcome everybody to the Wake Up Call channel. Violent Earth, the latest propaganda trying to convince the masses that climate change is real. So what they're doing is they're showing them all of these vicious, sickening climate catastrophes that are happening around the Earth. But here's the catch. None of them are actually a result of climate change. These, of course, are all a result of weaponized weather, which I'll get into in a moment. But I went over to the propaganda site CNN for my daily dose of propaganda, and I saw this at the top of the screen. Watch now. Explore the science behind harrowing weather events that are increasingly frequent. Watch Violent Earth with Liv Schreiber. And of course, the word science needs to be put in there because anytime, of course, they want to convince you that this is something that's happening naturally, they'll use the word science. It's pretty much put in front of anything they want to convince you is being done organically because they don't want you to become suspicious of what the government is actually doing. So let me show you the trailer for this propaganda piece, Violent Earth, and then let's get into the real details of what's actually going on that you could maybe share this with people out there you know who don't realize that weaponized weather is a real thing because they've been trained to say you can't control Mother Nature. So here's an article that came out. When it comes to climate change and democracy, Liv Schreiber is taking it personally. He's the one narrating the show. And of course, they would bring in another Hollywood stooge because everybody in Hollywood is trained in this. Everybody in Hollywood goes through the Tavistock Institute. They go through training in Central Intelligence. And of course, that's what they are. They're social engineers. They control your behavior. They influence your likes and dislikes. That's how you bring about this communist dictatorship that they're bringing about. So Liv Schreiber, of course, we've seen on the cover of magazines before. He's another illuminist doing all-seeing eye symbolism, another guy that just likes to hold his hand up over his eye, along with every other celebrity in Hollywood. But here's the trailer, of course, and they want to frighten people with what they're doing with the climate, but they want to make sure that you think it's actually the weather.
All right, how you doing? I'm coming, honey.
The sirens are going off.
And bang, the tornado hit.
You cannot outswim this. You cannot outrun it.
It really is a terrifying experience.
It is the stuff of nightmares.
You could hear it and feel it.
My eyes and my throat were burning. I'm thinking I'm going to die, and I thought that was it.
Violent Earth with Liv Schreiber premieres June 2nd at 9 on CNN.
So there are violent weather events happening all over. So now what the government needs to do is make sure that you don't become suspicious of these absolutely just non-natural occurring events that they want you to believe are natural. And that's where climate change comes in, right? So for the common person out there who thinks that all this stuff is happening naturally, you probably don't remember speeches by John F. Kennedy or Lyndon B. Johnson talking about being able to control the weather. And this is almost 70, 80 years ago.
We shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control.
It lays the predicate foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
When they were talking openly about having the ability to control the weather, needing the ability to do it, and he who controls the weather will control the world. It's the perfect weapon to use on civilians, especially civilians that you want to either depopulate or you want to move around like chess pieces, like pawns in the game. So most people hear this stuff that we're saying about the climate and they refuse to believe it, even when you show them evidence. So let's show them evidence first. These are government patents. Okay, the government didn't patent this because they were sitting around drinking beers and had a crayon in their hand and said, let's make up a tornado machine, right? The government patents these things and they tell you they patent it, and then they try to convince you that what they're doing is to create these things as a weapon for war against other countries. What they don't tell you is that they create these things to create silent wars against their own countries, their own people. So they have patent tornadoes. They have patent Tesla's earthquake machine, which they stole directly from Tesla upon his death. And you'll even see all of these patents going across the screen. All of these things, even going back to 1891. the method of producing rainfall in 1891. We're in 2024, okay? We are in 2024. These are all patents that you could go and look up yourself. You could go to Google, the Google machine that so many people out there get their information from, the same machine that silences, represses, or removes people like us from the internet. Well, you could actually find government documents, at least right now you can, by going and searching these patents, right? You got one in 1891 talking about a method of producing rainfall. And then as you just go through from 1891 all the way to now, you'll just continually see words in there, words like modification. You'll see sentences or patents for things like method for dispersing natural atmospheric fogs and clouds. And then the government will tell you, well, we're creating fogs and clouds as a way, in war on the battlefield. We could put fog out there, right? Like a smoke machine, and we could hide it from the enemies. You say, oh, okay, that makes sense. But then as you continue to go through, you go, well, now we see that they have the ability to create tornadoes. That's interesting. And what are we seeing in the United States of America? We're seeing tornadoes at a frequent rate that we'd never seen before. We're seeing 60, 70 tornadoes pop up a day in certain locations. And you'd say, why are the tornadoes just sitting in this specific spot? It's almost as if it's like a bulldozer coming through and removing these communities over and over, day after day, in the same exact locations. Well, they want you to just say that it's climate change. They want you to believe that it's the climate that's doing this and nothing else. Now, the government openly has the ability to do this. I'll show you a clip from Robert Fletcher, who I've used this clips before in the past, where he's spoken in front of Congress. They try to make him look like he's a lunatic when he points out the fact that the government is patenting these ideas. So the thing that's difficult isn't showing people so much that these things are patent, right? Because we can show them this. They say, where's your proof? You show them the proof. The problem is getting them to realize that the government hasn't been doing this since 1891 to use against Russia or China. They've been doing this to use against you. Listen to him talk about some of these patents.
So what we have here, according to us, to the Senate and Congress and other people, are folks that will look you straight in the face and say, well, the idea of weather control, creation of earthquakes electronically and all of that's absolutely ridiculous, Mr. Fletcher, or anyone else that might ask it. However, we find out that our nation 20 years ago actually went into an entire convention that said, now that we can do it, we promise that we won't use it against other countries. Well, unfortunately, that promise does not include using it against ourselves here in the United States. So, again, when Senator Cole had asked me what it was that I meant, inferring that the New World Order persons will utilize it as a weapon against us, that was what I meant. A friend of mine said, there's patents on that equipment. And as you can see here, he's absolutely right. These are the paperwork of the actual patents on the electronic means by which waves or rays, if you will, can be utilized to block, stop, move, alter, change the weather. It includes creating storms, expanding them, and even generating ELF, low-frequency vibrations that actually can move Earth in the ground itself and possibly generate the possibility of earthquakes. But the very equipment that's being used presently, covertly, secretly, in a multitude of outrageous experiments and programs right now, the application of magnetics, electronics, electronic waves, and what have you, is all come off of the original Tesla experiments.
So it's absolutely incredible that we're dealing with, we can look back at some of the things that I showed you earlier, patents from 1971 that specifically say things like weather modification methods. Weather modification. So you say to yourself, what is weather modification? Being able to manipulate the weather. So if they've had the ability to do this, they've patented these things, and then they come out month after month with shows like I showed you earlier that they push on CNN telling you that this is the science as to why it's happening. Could you believe for 1 second, finally, could you start thinking to yourself, wait a minute. So they have the ability to do this, and now they're telling us about this thing called climate change that's suddenly appearing. The government's mastered the ability to manipulate the weather. They've patented it. They've told you they could do it. They've specifically told you that they're going to use it as a weapon of war. But the last I checked, they weren't sending tornadoes over to Russia. They were sending tornadoes to Oklahoma and Michigan and Iowa They were sending tornadoes to specific locations that they want to wipe out. So once you realize that they have the ability to do this, the next step is saying to yourself, well, would somebody actually use this against their own citizens? Is there something to gain? You could think about all empires that have existed in the past that we've heard about, at least, right? The Roman Empire, and you look back and you watch all these shows that they keep putting out there about these emperors, etc., and you say, oh, well, look at these people. Wow, they really wanted power and control. Do you think that doesn't exist anymore? Do you think that there are people all of a sudden who don't want power, that aren't corrupt, that aren't wicked or sick? So what is the main problem that people have? The main problem that people have is thinking that somebody would use this on their own people. But other governments before have. But when you weaken society down enough, and then you have this propaganda machine like the television, where you could put these people out there in suits who speak nicely, who constantly talk about how they care about you, right? Look at the Democratic Party, what they do every time they come on TV. They talk about caring about the LGBT. They talk about caring about black people. They say all these nice things and everybody believes them at their word. They never show you that they actually care because they don't actually care. They're using you as a wall of protection between us, civilians who know what they're doing, and them. And most of these people believe the propaganda that the government puts out that tells them that this has something to do with the climate. They refuse to believe it. We provide them with the evidence that they can do it. I've been providing it for years. They can do it. You can't question the fact that these patents don't exist because they do exist. You can't question the fact that they can't do it because they've admitted they could do it. We've seen Operation Popeye in the Vietnam War being one of the obvious ones that they've used. We see the cloud seeding in Dubai where they tell you that they could make it rain. So they can do it. So if your issue is trying to figure out or think to yourself or convince yourself, because I know it's a scary notion. No, that's part of the problem, is that people don't want to think that there's people that are this sick. But they'll believe a crime show when they see about serial killers that they are that sick. But just imagine that the people in charge aren't smiling at you every day. Imagine the people in charge are your worst enemy. Imagine as a Democrat that it's Donald Trump who tells you that he has the ability to do this. Would you trust it then? Would you trust the government with this power then? Of course you would. But we're not at that point yet because we're never going to get to that point because they're never going to tell you that any of these things actually exist. Only people like me will tell you that they exist. You need to get to a point, and people out there need to get to a point where they realize that this is capable of being done by the government. It's all there. It's all there. So why do you think the government came out and told you and continues to tell you about climate change? Because they want to convince you that all of these weather anomalies, these phenomena that are going on are because the earth is getting cooler or warmer, whatever day of the week it is they decide to flip the narrative because it just goes back and forth. They're not even consistent with global warming and global cooling. They've changed it over the years, as I've shown you, with all the magazine covers. At first, it was cooling the earth. Oh, my goodness, Time magazine. Then it's warming the earth. Now it's climate change. It's whatever way they decide because they can't keep up with their own lies. The devil can't keep up with his own lies, and neither can his minions. So they need to put this stuff out there to constantly tell you that science, right, just like they told you it was science a couple years ago when they were poisoning you, it's science that is telling us why climate change is happening. And you have to believe the science. All these people out there are conspiracy theorists, even though they're proving to you that it's not a theory, it's a conspiracy fact. They have the ability to do it. They've had the ability to do it. And now all this propaganda out there is so that you're convinced that this is science that's doing it, not wicked people. Even though every single person out there, if they were able to separate from the left-right paradigm, if they were able to pull back from being so angry at their next-door neighbor for having a Ukraine flag up, or the person 2 houses down who has an American flag up with a police line, if they could get past all the things that the government has told you to look at and care about, and they could actually realize that all the people in Congress, the Republicans and the Democrats, are the ones who are gaslighting us into division. They're the ones who are distracting you with one another and then telling you in the background, oh, by the way, we need to start living our lives differently because of the climate. And you're supposed to just quietly be like, oh, yeah, right. That's an issue that we're all mutually in on, right? Remember those mutual issues that we all have to care about. How many times do they come out now? They talk about the climate thing affects everybody. Democrat, Republican, because that's your enslavement puzzle piece that they've created, right? We talk about global enslavement. You talk about the carbon footprint. living your life differently because of all these hurricanes, tornadoes, all these anomalies that are happening. Suddenly you're going to stay home more. You're not going to eat meat. You're going to be tracked and monitored how many carbon emissions you spend, all in the name of climate change. But climate change doesn't exist. It's not real. It's been proven that it's not real. It's there as a smoke screen so that you think that all these strange weather events that are occurring because of the climate change that's occurring. But it's really because the government has mastered climate manipulation. And all those patents you saw are proof of that. So get past the notion that they would never do this to you, that they would never do this to us. The government has shown you that they don't care about you. Great empires of the past, what have we heard? Well, most of these people never want to leave power. They want to always keep power. And what do they want power over? They want power over the people. And this is the perfect thing that they're using to do that. They never created this type of technology to use on other countries, right? You've never heard a story about, hey, we created an earthquake. We're going to start an earthquake in Russia. I would think, the hilarity of what they call war crimes, which is one of the funniest things that's ever been created. The fact that there's war crimes. You can there's war going on, but you got to stay within the fine lines here. And the people out there are like, that's a war crime. Isn't war in itself the crime? Especially since it's governments waging war on civilians. And that's all that's happening all around the world. And every one of these wars is that civilians are being killed. And we're being told that they're casualties in the line of fire. They're actually direct targets in the line of fire between governments working together against civilians. So it's the perfect thing to use for a psychotic group of imperfect people who want to perfectly ruin our lives and enslave us to a carbon footprint. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless all of you as always and your families.